Everybody, I'm Dave DeMatthews from the University of Texas at Austin, alongside with my doctoral advisee, Tori Hart, and my colleague, Dave Knight. And we recently published a study in Education Policy Analysis Archives that examines the long history of taxpayer-funded private school vouchers in the United States from 1869 to 2024. Our motivation for this work really stems from a growing concern within the field of education research, where many scholars have analyzed voucher implementation and outcomes through the lens of market theory, yet often without fully engaging with the core tenets of that theory or the complete historical record of how vouchers have evolved in practice. This has led to gaps in understanding the real world effects and the ideological underpinnings of these policies. As someone living in Texas, I've watched my state's legislature debate voucher proposals over many sessions without a full accounting of research or voucher history. While we were finalizing this article for for publication, Texas passed Senate Bill 2, a sweeping voucher law that creates education savings accounts, allowing families to use tax dollars for private school tuition, homeschooling expenses, and other educational therapies. With $1 billion in initial funding, it is now the largest day one voucher program in the nation. So we wanted to explore the extent to which voucher policies have created competitive educational markets and what the outcomes have been for students, both those who used vouchers, but also those indirectly affected by the programs. This inquiry led us to question the assumptions driving voucher policy, particularly those rooted in market theory. Rather than relying on historical narratives shaped by pro-voucher think tanks and advocacy groups, we conducted a comprehensive analysis of the policy's evolution over more than 150 years. Our goal was to assess whether the theoretical promises of market efficiency and improved outcomes hold up when examined against the actual history and evidence. What we found challenges many of the foundational claims made by proponents and reveals a far more complex and often troubling legacy, which Tori will talk about.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tori Hart, a doctoral candidate at the University of Texas at Austin. Our study began with a comprehensive policy scan. We reviewed every state-level voucher law enacted between 1869 and 2024. This included conventional vouchers, tax credits, tax deductions, and education savings accounts. To do this, we worked with a university librarian and conducted extensive searches across academic databases, state legislative archives, and media reports. We also consulted key reports and websites that track voucher legislation. Every policy we identified was verified through multiple sources, and we coded each one by type and enactment year, and also found repeal years. What we found was striking. Not only have voucher programs expanded rapidly in recent years, but many of the earliest programs, particularly those enacted in the Jim Crow South, were explicitly designed to maintain racial segregation. These programs weren't about market efficiency or parent choice. They were about denying Black students access to quality education. This history is often ignored in contemporary debates, but it's essential to understanding the roots and consequences of voucher policy.
I'm David Knight. I'm at the University of Washington. And so one of the key questions that we were interested in was whether voucher programs had ever created the kind of competitive education marketplace that economists like Milton Friedman had envisioned. So what does that require? Well, market theory rests on several key assumptions. First and foremost, that markets have many buyers and sellers, so that buyers have many different firms to choose from. Number two, people are free to enter and exit the market. Three, there's full information among buyers and sellers so that consumers understand the product. The product is relatively standardized. And lastly, that there are minimum transaction costs. When we looked at voucher programs across time and place, we found these assumptions were consistently violated. And more importantly, scholars weren't really wrestling with these assumptions in their evaluations of voucher programs. And so what sorts of policies did we find? Private schools often have selective admissions and they charge tuition that goes beyond the value of the voucher. And they may not serve students with disabilities or multilanguage learners. They often have other admissions criteria that prevent families from accessing the choice. And so families themselves face transportation barriers, application fees, and there's a lack of clear information about school quality. And so, in short, education markets don't really function like other markets. And yet, voucher policies continue to be promoted as if they bring families into this education marketplace. And we don't find evidence of that taking place.
So, in closing, one of the most important and novel contributions of our study is the documentation of how voucher policies were used during the Jim Crow era. We identified a series of state-funded programs, often called state tuition grants, that were explicitly designed to fund segregation academies and exclude Black students. Others, like historian Nancy McLean, have documented these policies. And we want to be clear that these policies, they cause serious harm. They diverted public funds away from integrated schools. They denied Black children access to education, and they helped to further entrench racial inequality. And this is not just a historical footnote. It's a foundational part of the voucher story that researchers and policymakers must reckon with. What's also troubling is how foundational thinkers like Milton Friedman advocated for vouchers without any empirical evidence. His ideas were rooted in ideology, not data. And despite decades of evidence showing that vouchers failed to create competitive markets or improve outcomes, particularly in that Jim Crow era, Friedman never revised his position. Then, in the late 1980s, scholars like John Chubb and Terry Moe began promoting vouchers again, just a decade after major court decisions had exposed the scale of discrimination caused by these programs. Their work largely ignored this history. That omission or minimization is deeply problematic. And many educational researchers today continue to theorize about markets in education without adequately attending to or even referencing this dark legacy. They focus on advanced quantitative models and methodologies while overlooking the social, racial, and historical realities that shape how these policies play out. Our study shows that voucher programs have consistently failed to deliver on their promises. They have not created competitive markets, they have not improved student outcomes at scale, and they have often exacerbated inequality. Despite this, voucher policies continue to expand, driven by ideology, political donations, and a persistent belief in some of market solutions, even when there's evidence to suggest otherwise. We believe it's time to shift this conversation. Let's invest in strengthening public education, building systems that serve all students without access and privilege. So thank you for watching our video. We invite you to read our full article in Education Policy Analysis Archives and join us in rethinking the future of education policy and of education markets. Thank you.